Hello, friends of Studio Brule. This is Steve Brule, and it is coffee time. Time when I go over some of the things that have come across my desk in the last day or so. And as you see, I have my VIP club member to the patriarchy up there, which authorizes me to comment on all of the evil comings and goings of the feminist empire. It stretches its thousands of tentacles all the way around the world. And today we're going to be talking about life in the Dominican Republic and how to escape the West, a place which is increasingly uncomfortable and filled with hatred against men, especially white men. And hello to Miko Jinin. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but I see you there in the comment section already. Welcome to the show. Now, before we get going, before we get to the Dominican Republic stuff, I'm going to go over one item that has recently come up that I think is worth talking about, and we'll just go over that quickly today. Now, let me expand this for you. This is from Campus Reform. And let's read the title here. Students want professor fired for allegedly falling asleep during anti-racism Zoom call. This is quite hilarious in one sense, but it's also ominous in the creeping and intensifying cancel culture, which I can say must only be coming from the most spoiled brat and incompetent, over-entitled kids ever in the history of the university system. They want everything they don't like canceled, and they want it canceled immediately, no matter what flimsy excuses it is. This is coming from Campus Reform. So let's have a quick look at the some quotes here. Here is from change.org. This is a petition that was put forward to cancel this professor. Now, I'm of two minds here. I mean, most of these professors have gone right along quietly accepting other people getting canceled, and it's really only an issue for them when it comes around to cancel them. But let's read the petition. MMC, Performing Arts for Racial Justice. Racial justice. Okay, that's a picture that they published of the professor, I guess screen capped from a Zoom call. The professor, by the way, claims that she was not sleeping. So let's get into this a little bit. And here is the complainant, the main complainant, Caitlin Gagnon from New York. And I think it's like Maryworth or something college. I can't remember the name of it. I think it's coming up here. Caitlin Gagnon was so incensed with rage that this professor dared snooze, according to her, during a Zoom call, that she created this petition to have her kicked out. Let's have a look. Here is her right here. And you can just look at the smirk and know that this is a feminist. And this is in the theater department. Thinking that she has the right and the arrogance and the moral right to have a professor fired for snoozing. These are the people growing up. The only thing that can explain this is the utter spoiledness that no one has ever required these people themselves, ever said no to them on anything. Here she is here, nose ring and all, signifying whatever those nose rings signify. I don't know. I always think that these people with their nose rings, they look like they need a tissue paper. Similar to the little boys running around with their pants down below their butt. They look like they have a diaper full of poop and they need the diaper changed. And here's from the petition. This is a petition that is demanding the removal of a faculty member who does not align with the anti-racist views and actions. This is their claims and actions. That Simon has a history, this is the professor's last name, I believe. Simon has a history of ignoring instances of racism in the form of racial profiling within the program and enabling the racist and sizist actions and words of the vocal coaches under her jurisdiction. Silence is racism. Sleeping is racism now. Reading from the top. Professor Patricia Simon is being condemned by students after she allegedly fell asleep on a Zoom call. A petition has reached close to 2,000 signatures in support of the professor's removal. Man, Such an over-entitled bunch of cry-bullies. There she is, snoozing. And this is an article from another website. Now, the link is in the description, but let's read the title. Jonathan Turley is the blog owner on this, I believe. New York professor faces latest termination petition over allegedly falling asleep during anti-racism meeting. And this is from the article, or the blog post. For many professors, a story out of New York may seem like an academic sequel to the 1982 horror film Don't Go to Sleep. That's a good analogy there, a good reference. Reading from the top. Students are seeking the termination of Marymount Manhattan Theater Arts Associate Professor Patricia Simon after she appeared to briefly fall asleep during an anti-racist meeting held on Zoom. I'm going to guess that these students this is probably the most theatrical attention they'll ever get in their careers, because they're probably too incompetent to pass the class, and most professors of theater arts are probably bored silly listening to their inaneness in class. 2,000 signatories. It is an ironic twist on the woke movement where literally not being awake is now cause to be terminated. I love that. The woke movement. If you're not awake, you shall be terminated. Professor Simon insists that the picture was a false image due to her bifocals and how she changed her angle to rest her eyes. It's quite possible. I think she says she has trifocals, by the way. And I know I lift my head up like this a lot of different times to read things, especially at a close computer screen. And Michael Keller says, how many students were asleep? Probably quite a lot of them. But these are the cry bullies, huh? Let's read on. And she says, reading from the top, I was not asleep as is implied at any point during the meeting, she said, adding, the photo used was taken without permission when I was looking down or briefly resting my Zoom-weary eyes with my head tilted back, which I must do in order to see my computer screen through my trifocal progressive lenses. I listened with my ears and heart the entire meeting. Hardly even matters. This is such a trivial matter, but to motivate a call for dismissal. However, reading from the top, even if true, why is a professor dozing off in a meeting now a matter for termination? Faculty meetings are a well-known cure for insomnia, even when you care deeply about the subject. I have seen colleagues virtually cause self-concussions by sleep-induced head bobbing. Who hasn't seen that? I literally fell asleep in class in high school once. I put my head down on the desk for what seemed like a few seconds, and I was out like a light. And then the student beside me trying to wake me up was pushing on the desk and pushed the desk all the way over, and I fell down on the floor with everything crashing in every direction. And I just woke up on the floor looking up at a crowd of people staring down at me. I think everybody's fallen asleep in some of these incredibly boring meetings that we're tortured with and we're required to attend at times. But that's not to stop the cry bullies now who have never had anyone say no to them before in their lives. I'm sorry for the brief interruption there. And on we go. Let's read again from the top here. The point is that Professor Simon denies the allegation, but even if true, the first response of these students is to seek yet another termination of a professor. It is an example of why many academics feel that they are living in an increasingly tolerant and hostile environment, an environment that most men have been facing through the court system for decades now, and white men in particular through feminist nonstop hatred. Maybe these faculties deserve a little bit of their own treatment. Some faculty are afraid to speak on contemporary issues or even defend colleagues or free speech due to the ubiquitous petitions to fire faculty deemed insufficiently supported of Black Lives Matter or the protests. Simon is not being accused of racist statements, but a failure to be sufficiently active in fighting racism. That's incredible. This is compelled speech and compelled action, just like Jordan Peterson warned us about 3 or 4 years ago, when he complained about or spoke out about the legislation in Canada requiring on penalty that you use preferred pronouns to all of these multiple, I don't even know what the acronym is anymore. I don't know if anybody can keep up with the acronym and the increasing number of genders. What are we at now? About 1,872? Anyways, let's read on. Reading from the top. However, this comes off like a rule that you cannot be woke unless you are literally awake. It belittles rather than reinforces the importance of the underlying movement to bring attention to the problems of racism and reforms, if they are indeed problems at all in today's world. I think racism will always be with us. Racism is just a part of in-group bias. All human beings are susceptible to it, depend in the groups, whatever they can be, as whatever kinds of groups you want, from your gender to your workplace to your nation to your sports club. And you can see it in football, I should say it's soccer, we call it, but football over in Europe. These in-group bias, they'll fight over their soccer teams or football teams. In-group bias is unavoidable in humanity, and racism has always been with us. It always will be with us. It's only a matter that we have to recognize that every single human being is susceptible to racism. Even more so, those people like who are in the Black Lives Matter camp and insisting that everybody else speak out in the way that they speak out. These are the people hiding their intolerance behind their claims of tolerance. That's what they are. They're projecting. Going to pause here and just recognize Oki Migtal. Thank you for your support, Studio Brule. And Oki says, taco burrito, what's that in your Speedo? I don't know the reference there, but it does rhyme. Thank you for that. Now, after having gone over this, the next thing I'm going to go here today is we're going to talk about the life in the Dominican Republic, which is the main reason for the show today. And I do have a lot of photos here. I don't know if I can get through them and the questions at the same time. Mention in the comments, do you want to see a lot of photos or a couple of photos, or stick only with the question and answer upon what it is like to live in the Dominican Republic specifically? And more generally, this is around escaping the West, escaping where you are not wanted. I've frequently said here on this show that I really believe truly that no man or woman or child or whatever, children don't have as much freedom to leave, but you should not stay where you're not wanted and appreciated. Wherever that is, that may be in your present relationship, in your present job, in your present city, in your family, in your country, wherever it is that you feel that you are not wanted and appreciated, leave, because there's more to the world out there. If you don't leave, you will never find a place where you are wanted and appreciated. You cannot change a group of people intent on hating you. And if they hate you, like feminists do, feminists hate men, particularly white men, and feminists dominate all Western world. When they hate you, they will find a way to punish you. They will find a way, and eventually that way is going to get violent. And that's what we're seeing right now at Black Lives Matter. There's an increasing number of attacks on people, specifically because they are white. And this, in no uncertain terms, is coming directly from 50 to 60 years of feminist-originated hatred, vilification of men and white men in particular. The hatred is there. The violence has started, and it'll get worse. I say even if there isn't violence, don't stay where you're not wanted and appreciated. Now, that doesn't mean that it wouldn't come a day when you have to stand and fight. That day may come, but it's not here right now. Our culture has grown in intolerance, incredible intolerance and hatred of white people and men in particular. Let's read this question. Understand you considered other countries in the Caribbean and Central American and perhaps South American. What, if any, other countries were good? I have not investigated a lot of countries in my entire life. I've traveled a bit, but not stayed any particular ones long enough to really give a sense of whether it's a good place to live or not. I would say the 3 countries that I've sampled, or I guess let's call it 5, Canada, obviously. The US, I spent enough time in the US to know what it's like to live there in some areas of the problem with the US is that it's so varied. There's the 50 states are almost like 50 countries. There's so much variation across the US that you can't generalize living in the US. I think to some degree you can generalize living in Canada. As big as it is, Canada's culture is much more uniform across the country. You can barely even detect many accent differences, notwithstanding Newfoundland and so on. But I've said Canada and the US, Dominican Republic, obviously. I've been here the better part of 3 years now, not 100% of the time. Colombia, I was there 1 month. It's not really long enough to tell for sure whether that's, to make a conclusive analysis of what it's like to live there. And I spent 2 months in Florence, Italy. And I would say, obviously right now, I like it here in the Dominican Republic. It's been the life here has been quite good to me, I should say. And I'll just pause here and recognize James Burlow. And thank you for your support, Studio Burlow, James. And James says, have you heard of the assassination of men's rights lawyer Mark Angelucci? Yes, I have. And that's a tough topic. I mean, we briefly acknowledged that topic on a previous coffee session. I did not know Mark very well. I met him in Los Angeles at the premiere of the Red Pill, Kathy Jay's film, and not enough to even really comment on it. It's obviously a very big loss. I didn't realize until after he was dead just how much he had accomplished for the men's rights movement. I'd say if the best video is the one I think Paul Elam and Janice Fiamengo and a bunch of others did. There was probably a dozen people involved all of whom knew Mark quite well. So have a look at that video if you want to know more about Mark's life and commentary on that. I don't feel that I knew him well enough to host a full video on his life, but maybe if I get other people who are interested in that on the show, we can talk about that, because I don't know very much about Mark. So Colombia, to me, looks like a good shot. I would go there. I would give a shot living there, especially Cali. Cali is a town of about, I think, 500,000 to 1 million, maybe less. I can't really remember the numbers, but it has a very good climate, and it's very easy to do things there and very inexpensive. I liked Cali better than Medellin and better than Bogota. Bogota is cold and wet. I wouldn't live there. I like visiting there, but I wouldn't live there. Medellin, I might. I didn't get the chance to investigate it all that much, but it seems a little bit too much like a big congested city to me. So Cali has a little bit better vibe to it in my mind. A little more low key, a little easier going life. The north coast of Colombia, we're in Santa Marta and Barranquilla. These places that up there is very hot and humid, I think, all the time. That would be a bit of a detractor to me. Even though the Dominican Republic is pretty hot and humid, it's hotter and more humid in Santa Marta by a noticeable margin. So let's move on to the next question. Am I a permanent resident, or is it more year to year? I am not a resident of the Dominican Republic. Now, some people are here, and one fellow I know even got his citizenship, and which is a long and detailed procedure. That's a lot of work to do these things. I like to go back and forth a little bit. I don't know if it's worth it for me to get a permanent resident. I can stay here for a year without problem, no problems at all. And if I overstay my visa, or you can get your visa ahead of time up to, I think, 6 months. I think you have to get it 3 months at a time if you're going to do it legally. But what most guys do, which I've been doing, is just coming down and stay until I'm ready to leave, and then I pay the exit fee on the way out. So I'm not legal here at the moment. that might translate into a problem down the road. But the way it sits right now is that if you overstay your visa, then on the way out at the airport, there's a booth there, and you pay a set fine depending on how much you've overstayed. And I think that up to 9 months or 12 months, it is about 4,000 pesos. 4,000 pesos is about $75 US. And that's your penalty for overstaying. Now, if you overstay by 1 day of your month visa, you're going to pay about 2,000 or 2,500 pesos. So the difference between a 1 day overstay and a 1 year overstay is not very much. Is it hot down there? Yes, it is hot. But I wouldn't call it, it's not South Texas in the summer hot. That's way worse than it ever gets here. The typical temperature here, if you're in Celsius, runs between, in the winter, in the daytime, 26 to 29 degrees Celsius. And at night, in the winter, about 20 to 24 Celsius. Drops by about 3-4 degrees at night, maybe 5 Celsius at night. For anybody who's not on Celsius, 20 degrees is a cool room temperature, 68 Fahrenheit. 30 degrees is considered hot. It's about 86, I think. So yeah, 20 is 68, 25 is 76, 77, and 30 degrees Celsius is 86. And it gets, in the summer now, it gets hotter, obviously. And it gets to between, in the daytime, 29 to 33 Celsius. And in the nighttime, 25 to 28 Celsius, thereabouts. And there are some variants in that, obviously, but it's almost always humid here. We're talking about 80% relative humidity most of the time. All right, let's move on to the next question. Now, what does it take to get into the DR on whatever basis you are there? A plane ticket. You show up and you have an automatic 1-month visa. You can extend that pretty much easily to 3 months if you go in and you pay a small fee. And you can keep extending it to 3 months up to about a year is my understanding. But like I said just a minute ago, I just wait and pay on the exit fee. There are guys who have been here for 20, 30 years and more doing exactly that. And there are other guys who have their residence, their legal residency. It is a hassle to get the legal residency here is the biggest hurdle. But there are advantages to it. And if you're the kind of person who gets nervous about not following the rules exactly to the T, you're probably better to get your legal residency. And let's go to the next question. What are the least violent places to live in the DR? As an older white man, if that makes a difference. I'll say where the violent places are. Wherever there's a lot of tourism, there's more violence. There's also more police. And in the tourist, like the actual tourist resorts and that, you're pretty safe. And you're pretty safe around there either. Most of the people who get in trouble with violence here, they go out looking for it. So they'll go to the bars till 3 or 4 in the morning, and even shady bars and where they're hanging out doing drugs and things like that. And it's not hard to avoid trouble here. So I mean, it's pretty obvious when there is an area of trouble. So if you're going to live in an area like, well, Punta Cana doesn't count because it's a totally controlled village. And so that really, if you go to Punta Cana, and everybody knows Punta Cana, you're in like any resort and anywhere in the world. You won't even know you're in the Dominican Republic, if you ask me. And most people who go to Punta Cana will go out on one of these little tour bussy things and see the mountains all protected and controlled. So it's not really an area I know anything about other than it's purely controlled tourist area. Now, just around the north side here, if you go all the way over to the east, you're going to have La Galeras and Las Terrenas, and those are tourist areas that Dominicans relax at. Very beautiful areas. And then if you're coming towards the center or north of the island, we're Puerto Plata here, you've got Sosua and Cabarete. Those are two tourist destinations, Sosua and Cabarete. And at night on the beaches there, you got to watch yourself. I don't think you have to watch yourself for getting killed or beat up, but you'll get harassed by prostitutes nonstop on the beach at night there. And they're pretty good pickpockets. The general rule is stay away from there if you don't want your pocket picked. Or just don't go out with anything important on you other than the little bit of money you're going to spend at night on the beach if you're going into some of the bars. Most people who go there will be spending their days on the beach. And I went once or twice at night, and I did get robbed of a gold necklace while I left the bar there. Let's go on here. Oh, you talked about safe areas. Most areas away from the tourist areas are relatively safe. And most places where gringos like me are going to live are in, they have some kind of security. Most people live inside of a gated community, and there's all kinds of gated communities around, some more expensive than others. Costambar here, where I'm staying, has its own security, but it's not really tight, but it's 24/7. They have security guards going around. But you still will have the odd incident come up like you would in anywhere in the world, in Canada, the US, or in Europe. You can't just go running around willy-nilly, not paying attention to your environment anywhere in the world. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Cost of living: rent, food, transportation, healthcare. I saw your original video on this from a few years ago. I think YouTube might have suppressed anything further. Plus, I thought updated prices would be useful. Okay. A decent apartment or even house, you can rent here for about, starting at around $300 per month. And you can go up quite high. I mean, there's some very luxurious places and places that are targeting Americans for short stays. You can pay $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month, for depending on your luxury level. But my view is that to get a reasonable place that you're going to be fairly comfortable and you probably have all of the amenities you're accustomed to, think in the range of $500 per month for rent. Food, the grocery store food is about the same price you'd pay in Canada or the US. But food in the restaurants, you have quite a lot of variation. Any of the Dominican restaurants are very, very cheap, especially for lunch. For lunch, I've regularly paid 100 to 200 pesos for a plate of fresh cooked food. 100 to 200 pesos runs about $2 to $4 US. And you can get a large beer, which is almost 2 beers, for 125 pesos in those places. And that's about $2.50 US, or a little bit less. We stopped with 4 guys on a motorcycle at one of these places in the mountains, and we split 2 large beers between 4 of us because we were riding, and then we had each a plate of food, and it was all a good sized plate of food, and we each paid, I think it was less than 200 pesos, which is $4 for lunch for that. There's these places called picapollos where they cook the same food every day, and the 2 of us can eat for about 200 to 250 pesos. So that's 125 pesos maximum. That's a good amount of food for lunch. Dinners are a little bit more expensive if you're going to go to a regular sit-down restaurant, but it typically $10 gets you, actually $10 can get you a beer and a decent plate of food. You can go way up from there. And even less expensive restaurants have menu items that are more expensive on them. So you can get cheap to expensive. But if you're going to go for lunch, think $3 US, and for dinner, think $10 to $12 to maybe $15 US in restaurants. Transportation. It's easy to get around here. If you're comfortable in the back of a motorcycle, there's a thing called motoconcho. And a motoconcho is a motorcycle guy who gives you a ride for 50 pesos if it's in the town, in the area where his regular route is. And if it goes slightly out of town, it's 100 pesos. So that's $1 to $2 US. and they're all over the place. Literally, you can almost not go anywhere in the island without seeing motoconchos. And so you pay him your 50 pesos, and you sit on the back of his motorcycle, and he takes you where you want to go. If it's longer than like a 5-minute ride, you're going to pay 100 pesos. There's buses. They call them guaguas. I think I have a photo of them. And they're just like extended minivans. And they are very cheap. You go from town to town. It's about 100 pesos. Again, $2. And you can go on those. They stop regularly, almost like a city bus, but not quite as often as a city bus. But they will stop at their regular spots. So in a 30, 40 kilometer ride, say from here to Sosua, the guagua will probably stop a dozen to 20 times, and your ride will take you about 45 minutes to an hour. Now, if you're going to go longer distances, for instance, from major city to major city, there's like full-size bus lines that you see in Canada and the US, all air conditioned with proper, really comfortable seats, and they go regularly all the time. As an example, for 250 pesos, you can go from Puerto Plata to Santiago. It's about an hour's drive. And that costs you, 250 pesos. So you're talking about $4 and something US. If you're going to go all the way to Santo Domingo, it's about a 3.5-hour drive. And you can go on one of these coach lines, and it takes you about 3.5 to 4 hours, and it costs you a little bit less than $10 US for that ride. So that kind of transportation is very cheap. Car rentals are all over the place. They're roughly the same prices you pay in Canada to the US for car rentals. If there's a bunch of private guys who rent out little cars and Jeeps and whatnot, they're a little bit cheaper. And I've used them, and they're quite reliable. And then my favorite is to buy your own motorcycle, because you can buy a motorcycle here starting at a little over $1,000 US, Chinese motorcycles, and it will last you years if you take care of it. And I figure if you get 2 years of use out of a $1,000 motorcycle, you can throw it away and it doesn't owe you anything, but you can still sell it anyways. I bought a motorcycle that's like a on-off-road adventure style bike, and I've ridden it all over the country here. I bought my second one in January, and that cost a little bit less than $2,000 US, brand new Chinese motorcycle. I have some pictures of that in the coming up in the photo sessions here. Okay, I think that's pretty good on. Oops, see what I missed something here. Okay, food type and quality of food. The Dominican don't use much spices, so a lot of it is bland. And I sometimes travel with my own bottle of Tabasco sauce because I like spice. But some of the other food is really, really good. For instance, there's a lot of stalls alongside of the road, and they do smoked roasted pork, pigs. And sometimes they're all a little different. Some of them aren't that knowledgeable how to do it well, but there's a couple of them I've got to know about where the smoky flavor of the roasted pig at the side of the road is awesome. It is amazing. And some of the all of them have stuff like yuca and plantain and other stuff like that available outside the road. Rice and beans is big as well. Stewed and fried chicken, all very popular here. The chicken usually is quite good. And the thing they call chicharron, that is a kind of a roasted pork, very delicious. And it comes with a kind of a lemony, vinegary sauce or something. Cost of eating at local restaurants, I think I've gone over that. Any variations you might be aware of by cities or towns which you would recommend to live in? I've only really lived here, but there's several towns I've stayed in that I would consider living in permanently. Inside the island, there's one called Mariposa. It's up in the mountains. Very cute little town with all the amenities you'd need, and some good apartments and things to stay at. Another one, Constanza. That's a farming community. That's further into the mountains. And Las Terrenas is a very pretty little area, very down to earth. It's a touristy area though for Dominicans, and it's a little bit pricier than some of the areas to live in. And so I would write it off for that. It's also a very small town, and it's a little bit far away from things. Samana is not a bad little town on the water on the east side. And then if you go up the island to the west, you're going to see places like Luperon. I would consider that area too. So there's quite a few areas around here. The further you go away from a major town, obviously, the more trouble you're going to have getting basic supplies that you might be accustomed to. But I mean, not basic supplies, but specific things that you like. For instance, I like black Kalamata olives. I can get them here in Puerto Plata. I like Greek yogurt and a lot of regular types of foods that I like to get. I can get all of that stuff here in Puerto Plata. If I lived in Luperon, for instance, I'd have to do a grocery run once a month or something to come in from these things that they may not have there. Let's move along here. Transportation again. Okay, this is a bit repetitive. Let me just read what he says here. I know you find a motorcycle good, but you look like an old pro. Would it be feasible for someone like me who has never ridden? If not, are there feasible alternatives for shopping and getting to restaurants and perhaps even some exploration of the island? Yeah, there's the buses that I mentioned. And taxis. Taxis run about 300 pesos to go from anywhere in Puerto Plata to anywhere else in Puerto Plata. 300 pesos is a little bit less than $6 US. I think with exchange rates right now, it's just a little over $5 US. And so when I have the motorcycle, but when we're going to go down and buy a big set of supplies and stuff like that, or something big item, we just take a taxi home, and a lot of the taxis are minivans, and it costs $5 US. So it's very easy that way. If you're going to be needing a car or transportation every single day, then you either can buy your own car, and you can get cars starting between $5,000 and $10,000 US dollars. Cars, and they're not very good cars for that price. $10,000 to $15,000 will get you not a bad little vehicle to get around here. But I prefer the motorcycle. And the fellow says, yeah, I look like an old pro. I'm not an old pro. I had a motorcycle when I was 26 for one summer. And then I rode around on my brother's. He was selling his Kawasaki 1000 and left the country and wanted me to sell it for him. I rode that around for a summer. So I didn't have very much motorcycle experience when I got here. And so I just took it easy to start with. And one fellow that I got to know gave me, Peter, you'll see some pictures of him. He was an old pro. He'd been riding since he was 14 years old. He has like 45 years of riding experience in every kind of type of bike, including trial bikes and off-road bikes and track racing bikes. And he gave me a lot of tips, and I practiced those tips. The first thing is that first practice on roads that don't have very many cars on it until you get, accustomed to handling the bike better. I recommend the motorcycle enormously. If you're uncomfortable with the motorcycle, you get a Pasola. You can get a Pasola is like a moped kind of thing. Those you put your feet in front of you, and you can get one of those for less than $1,000 US, probably brand new $800-900 US. Now, you can't go very far in those things, and you really got to watch for the holes in the road, and that's the biggest reason that I would suggest a regular motorcycle over a Pasola. The Pasolas, the scooters, it's a scooter, a Vespa. They have really small wheels, and those wheels can get swallowed up in some of the holes here quite easily, and the suspension is not the greatest. I would use a Vespa, Pasola, a scooter, whatever you want to call it, for going around the little town here. And a lot of people do. They're great little bikes for going short little distances where you know the roads. But I would not take them on any kind of distant trip, just because if you don't know the road, you might run into a pothole, and have an accident and stuff like that. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And yes, there are horses here. Uncle Cucky says about horses. Yes. A horse is a lot more work, and you'd need to be living in the country and have a place to keep it and maintain it and feed it and clean it and all the rest of that stuff. You can rent them too, but they're not cheap to rent. It's generally only tourists that rent horses here. And let me just get back, see if I missed anybody. Yeah, scooters are good. Most are small engines here. I have a 250. And the 250 is one of the larger engines. The most common are 150s and 200s cc's. Now, that's in the Chinese bikes. There is a couple of Chinese bikes for 300s and maybe even a 400. I don't know. I haven't seen the 400s around, but I have seen a 300 around. Not the style of bike I wanted. And there's also Japanese bikes, but you're going to pay 2 to 3 times the price for the Japanese bike. They are a lot better. There are, Japanese bikes their quality is very, very noticeably better than the Chinese bikes, but you pay for it. And a Japanese bike, if you get it stolen here, you'll probably cry a little bit because of the price you're going to pay. You're going to pay $6,000 to $8,000 for a good Japanese bike here, whereas the Chinese bike starting at $1,000 US. You don't want to get it stolen, but you're not going to lose sleep over it. In the end, you'll be back on your feet with another bike very fast. Hoverboards, yeah. Okay, what do we got here? Healthcare. Let me put this a bit bigger screen here. I do have healthcare here, and I have never had to use it, so I don't know if it's any good. I've heard other people say it's pretty good. At least it pays me into the it gets me into the private clinics if I need them here. It costs me, what does it cost me? I think $30 US about per month. But again, I don't really know how good it is. There are limits to them. I can't really remember what the limits, the dollar limits are per year and per item and stuff like that. Like I say, haven't had to use it. I would say this though, if I was going to need a very serious operation or something was diagnosed and needed, it was a tough treatment, I would go back to Canada or the US, or probably Canada for me, because I just have to be resident there for 6 months and they'll fix you up. The problem with Canada is that, you probably won't get diagnosed until it's almost too late, because there's the accessibility of things like MRIs and testing is just not what it is in the US and other parts of the world. What else do we say here? Do you still have any healthcare coverage? I do. I have Canadian healthcare coverage because I am here working, doing documentary work here. And so I am out of the country for the reason of working. And that means I'm not subject to the 6-month rule. If you are just leaving Canada and you're out of the actually it's by province. If you're out of your province in Canada for 6 months, you lose your healthcare coverage. To regain it, you have to go back and live in that province for another 6 months without leaving. And then you automatically are covered again as a Canadian citizen. Do you have pre-existing health issues? I hope not. I don't know of them if I have them. I don't need to know what they are, of course, such that you had to navigate that in health insurance. No, but to be honest, I probably should take better care of my health, go in and get checkups and stuff like that. But I can't remember when the last checkup I had was, probably a few years. And then probably every 5 or 6 or 8 years, I've had a checkup. I can't say whether, I don't think I have any illnesses. I mean, I get a sore back, and stuff like that. Let's read on here. I know from some videos that you have a girlfriend down there. Might I ask if there is a legal downside to living with a woman down there? Good question. I do have a girlfriend here. Is there a legal downside to it? Well, probably. I know that if you're married and you have property here, you can, by law, you will, have to divide your property up. And I know there's some guys here who have gone through very significant problems with being married to a Dominican woman. Dominican women are women, like everywhere in the world. You may have relationship problems. This isn't a panacea. You're not going to come down here and have this dream life that, you're going to always have this perfect relationship with this perfect woman, and there's not going to be any risk to it. There was a fella here who was murdered by his wife just a year and a half ago, for money, because, there's a long story. I could tell you more about that later. And there's another fella here who committed suicide because of this protracted divorce. And he was, to be honest, he was depressed the whole time I've known him. He was a bit depressive and negative, and his relationship fell apart with his Dominican wife. They separated, and he was going through the courts for a long time, not seeing his kid. Same kind of story you've seen in Canada and the US. There may be reasons for his problems, and he ended up committing suicide about just before the coronavirus quarantine stuff started. But here is the other thing, that if you're here like I am, with minimal stuff, I have a motorcycle and a few suitcases worth of things, the risk of loss if things go bad is pretty minimal. I mean, you can't take what you don't have here, even at the worst of situations. If I lost everything here, everything, and took a plane home with a t-shirt on and a pair of shorts, I'd be fine. But if you get married and you buy a house and your relationship goes bad, you're going to lose half your house, like everywhere else in the world. Everywhere else that I know of in the world. Maybe not lose all your house. You probably lose less than you would lose in Canada. But the law here on property, or rather the matrimonial home law here, is similar to a lot of places, a lot of jurisdictions. I don't think it really matters unless you have a specific agreement. They do have legal agreements that couples can go into. You will be susceptible for half of your house. Now, houses aren't worth near as much down here as they would be up in Canada and the US. But another part of the legal thing here is you don't have the same draconian rape laws and domestic violence laws. Here, you'll actually need evidence. If somebody makes a charge of domestic violence here, it's not going to go anywhere unless there's evidence. So false charges are not likely to cause you any trouble here. False charges of rape, false charges of domestic violence, they happen, I'm sure, but they don't get any traction either from the police or from the courts. Not that from what I've known, anyways. Excuse me. I understand from your videos that relations between the sexes down there are more normal and warmer. Would I be correct in inferring that the DR is not an everything is rape culture? Yeah, that's what I was referring to. It is not. And women are a lot different here. If a woman is interested in you here, she's not going to beat around the bush. She will let you know. You will know that she's interested in you. But other than that, there are a lot of prostitutes. If you go into the tourist area, there's going to be a lot of prostitutes. But even normal women here are not as cold. They're definitely warmer, and they're definitely less inhibited in many, many ways. And they're definitely less prone to hysterical, aggressive, and manipulative moves. It's not that kind of stuff won't happen. It can happen anywhere. I got a question from somebody here. When you get married, gift her the whole house. Uh-oh. Yeah, not a good idea. Okay. I think I have a great relationship with my girlfriend here. And I don't know whether some of the reason is that, I'm not bound. And there could be some of that. Like I noticed when I got married, almost immediately when I got married, the change in women in the West is pretty pronounced. They've got you. And so there isn't as much incentive to be cooperative and to work things out. They know a woman in the West knows that they've got you no matter what. if the relationship continues on and she wants to be abusive to you in the house, there's nothing you can do about it but leave. And if you leave, she's got the upper hand in court and everything. So where's the incentive for cooperation? So let's carry on here. Would you happen to know if that is built right into the laws, such that someone would be taken seriously if they came back the next year and said he didn't get enough consent? I don't think you're going to see that particular problem here. That is a problem peculiar to the US and Canada. This going back 30 and 40 years for accusations that are just ridiculously over the top and unprovable, indefensible. I don't think any of that, I've not heard of anything like that happening here. That's not to say that it can't come here. The West has a history and a habit of exporting its laws and customs and practices around the world. The rest of the world has a history of looking at Canada and, or mostly the US, for direction and where to go. But as far as I know, there's not very much in the way of feminism here in the Dominican Republic. And if you're in a feminist country, for instance, like Argentina, Argentina is a country I've wanted to go and visit, but I'm putting it off of my list for the pure reason that it is a feminist-infested country. Wherever you have feminism, you have death and destruction and the misery. And if a country is a strong feminist country, that's all you need to know to avoid it, in my opinion. Okay, let's move on to another question here. Forgive me noticing that your girlfriend appears to be a fair amount younger than you are, if that is the case. If so, are such relationships fairly common down there? Yes, very common. She is 13 years younger than me. At 47, I'm 60. Although she looks younger than she is. She passes for 35 or 30 or 35 or so most of the time, I think. But yeah, it's very common. Here, up to 20 years difference wouldn't be noticed. It would not draw attention or when I say 20 years, like they might notice a 40-year-old and a 20-year-old as a difference of age, but maybe not. But 60 and 40, nobody would bat an eye at that here. Or 50 and 30, no one would bat an eye. That's a normal age difference. As it gets bigger than that, people notice, but no, that's not a big deal. Let's carry on here. Are fairly common down there. Yeah, they are quite common. And you can guess at some of the reasons for it. Okay, read on. If a good marriage isn't possible in Canada or for men, or at least unlikely, then the big advantage to being a single older man is to date younger women. Ideally, someone young enough to make feminists mental. Yeah, it happens a lot down here. There are guys in their 60s dating women in their 20s. And there are guys here who don't want a permanent girlfriend. They prefer to just find a girlfriend for a short period of time, or friends, and date them, take them for dinner, whatever you want to do. So yeah, lots of that kind of stuff goes on. There's guys here who maintain a girlfriend. She'd be fairly young, in her 20s, and he may be a retired guy in his 60s or even 70s, and he'll maintain her with her own apartment in one of the barrios, and she'll come to visit, a couple times a week, or whenever he arranges or she arranges some date time, and they go on for years and years, probably all his life like that. And some of these women will just be with him, and they like that arrangement. They get. I know of one who pays, I think, 30,000 pesos a month in maintenance, and 30,000 pesos. He's maintaining a young Dominican girlfriend. She comes over for whenever he feels like it, and he doesn't want anybody there all the time. She'll spend a night or two, and that's it, or a couple nights a week, or maybe whenever. I don't know the entire schedule, obviously, But the cost of 30,000 pesos is about $500 and something US per month. That pays her apartment and her entire lifestyle. And apartments here in the regular barrios in the Dominican Republic, where Dominicans live, start at about, a decent one, starts at about 5,000 pesos per month. 5,000 pesos is about 90 something US dollars. 92 US dollars a month. That is actually a reasonably livable apartment or small house. If you rent in the barrios where the Dominicans live, barrios are like little communities, a 10,000 peso place in a barrio is very nice. Now, so the affordability of maintaining that kind of a girlfriend relationship, it's quite affordable, if that's your thing. Other guys, there are guys here who just go with prostitutes. And there are guys who just will have a girlfriend for short periods of time, just when they're lonely, and they'll find a girlfriend that'll last for, I don't know, a few months or something, and then it fades away. It's just like you might see in Canada or US. Do one need to pay taxes in both DR and Canada? No. I don't. Almost nobody pays taxes in the Dominican Republic, even if they are citizens here. If you have a business, you probably have to pay some taxes. And even if you buy a property, if your property that you buy is under 200,000 US dollars, then there's no property tax. There's no purchase tax and there's no property tax. So this is a big advantage. And this is something I might consider doing, is buying a farm outside of the country, a small farm. I think you can get, my understanding, I haven't got all the prices in on this, is that you can, I'm just going to pop up John B's comment here. You could afford to pay for a few women's apartments. Sounds good to me. If you can afford to blow off, say, 1,000 US dollars per month. Yeah, you can keep 2 to 3 girlfriends in their own apartments. 2 to 3 US dollars. Sorry, let me think this through. Say now. Well, not 3 probably, but you could keep 2 girlfriends at $1,000 US per month and keep them happy. Now, there's no guarantee that they're not going to be running around with other Dominican guys when she's not with you, and some won't, but a lot will, and they'll just lie to you about it. You know, you'll never know. That's part of the thing. It is a form. Think of it like I think of it like a what's that word? I forget. There's a word for it of that, but basically a concubine, something like this. It's basically a formalized girlfriend relationship, but it's not necessarily exclusive. But you can know that those girls aren't prostitutes. There is a difference here. Those girls will have a very limited number of other partners if they have other partners, but they may have other partners. But it won't be the kind of revolving door that the prostitutes have. So it is a much safer way to go about it, if that's your thing. Taxes. Yeah, I was going to mention, I was thinking I might end up buying a piece of property, a little farm outside of the country, build a tiny little house on there. You can get farms here for around 1 or 2, I'm going to say 2,000 US dollars starting for small farms. And if you have 10,000 US dollars, you can get a nice piece of property, not necessarily in those kind of enclosed neighborhoods where they're building houses directly targeting North Americans for sale, because they're propping the prices right up to American style prices. You'll pay $250,000, $300,000 for your bungalow house in those neighborhoods. So if you want to enjoy the affordability, you can't go into those neighborhoods that are designed and marketed towards Americans. And another question here. I don't know Spanish, although presumably could pick some up over time. How big a roadblock is that from the get-go in terms of living down there? if you're in a expat area like Costambar or some of the other urbanizations, they call them, or enclosed villages, it wouldn't be that big of a problem. There are people who have been living here for 30 years and barely speak any Spanish, literally. I don't know how you manage not to pick up some Spanish in 30 years, but there are people living here and continue to do it, and they're enjoying their life here, knowing next to no Spanish. I think it's worth it to learn Spanish and actually put some effort into it. Your life will be much richer. You will have more independence to go out into different places, because if you go out into the mountains and villages and smaller towns, there's going to be no English. They will not understand any English. Now, you have your phone, you have Google Translate on there, you can translate and get what you want done, but it's hard to establish a kind of friendships and relationships if you don't speak the language. Okay, and that's all of the questions I had. Any other questions in the comments? Let me know right now, as I'll go over to some photos to give you a sense of what it's like here. I have flashed up photos before. I don't know if people are interested in it. Let me know if you're interested or not. But this is photo time. Let me put this up a little bit bigger here. Okay, this shot is downtown Puerto Plata. And it's just a cobblestone style street with the shops are all closed on the side here. And this is on the Malecon, a couple of boats overturned, and you can see some of the fishing boats just tied off the shore, small fishing boats. I just say, Susan says, what about healthcare? As I mentioned earlier in the episode, I pay about $30 US per month for healthcare. I have not had to use it. There are upper end limitations on the values of it. Other people that are here forego healthcare and pay as you go, because hospital fees are nowhere like Canada and the US here. If you have an operation or a serious issue, a broken bone or something like that, getting it fixed here is not near as expensive as Canada if you don't have healthcare. Okay, this is a little bar bistro in the countryside outside of Cabarete. I know the owner, Hill Van Gogh, lives right out there in the mountains in Cabarete. Hill, I don't think I have a picture of her here, but she's about 85 years old. I think she's lived here for 50, 60 years, and she used to own and run the Happy Hippo bar in Costambar. She sold it to the new owners who have it right now, Brian and Nuri, who have renovated it. It's quite nice. Now, this is a kind of give you a sense of the character. You'll see all kinds of weird things in this country that you would never see in Canada or the US. These are all plastic bottles tied up, being brought to sell at recycle somewhere on the back of this guy's truck. This is Vagamondo, is a coffee shop I've frequented regularly in Cabarete. They sell some really good coffees in there. And they've moved locations since I took this picture. And the new locations is every bit as nice. This is inside Vagamondo. Great place to sit and do a little computer work and have, I've sat there sometimes having 3 or 4 cappuccinos in a row. Because I love cappuccinos. And they make a really good cappuccino, actually. I can actually seriously endorse their cappuccino. I'm fussy on cappuccinos. But it is very good. A quick question here from Harry Holbrook. What is the HIV rate for females in the Dominican Republic? I don't know. I've heard that at least at one point in time that there was a lot of HIV among Haitian prostitutes. There's a number of the Haitian women here that are very poor, live in very bad situations, and will have sex with anyone for almost no money. But the upside of this is that it's not hard to spot. You know, it's pretty obvious. You don't want to get involved with somebody who's been banging every sailor and traveler who ever walked down the street for 100 pesos, you know. Don't do it. Okay, let's get back to these photos here. I don't know if that's going forward or not. Okay, this is the beach in Cabarete. And this is a tourist, I think, or might be a resident there. A blonde woman was jogging one morning when I was on my walk. And this is in Costambar, one of the bars. Is sort of looking through the side of one of the beach bars. That's Ton's bar. Ton, the owner, is an expat, and he's owned this bar here for I don't know if anybody knows how long. For a long time. This is a night. That's Fior, my girlfriend. This is at the Happy Hippo one night when the power went out, and there was only a few of us there, so we had these like candles on the tables, and we continued having our little social gathering and a couple of beers. Here's that same night right here. That's that fellow there owns a little resort in Costambar. That's his wife. There's Fior there. Crime and drug laws. Yeah, there's crime and drug laws. I don't know. That's a very general question. Marijuana is against the law here, but it's everywhere. And cocaine is everywhere. It's against the law too, but it's not a whole lot of enforcement. This is the Teleferico. This cable car goes up the mountain where there's a really beautiful park up there. It's great to walk around. It's about 10 degrees at least colder at the top, Fahrenheit. So about 5 degrees Celsius up there, and cooler. Got walking paths and gardens and a great view and a restaurant. I've gone up there quite a few times. I'd take the road on my motorcycle up the back road. That's a view from the top of the mountain. This is right beside Puerto Plata, actually. This is a view from the top again. And this is the little restaurant at the top of the cable car. Again, up there it will be coolish. Like, we'll often go up there, bring a little jacket or something. Great for walking and hiking around. Some people go up there and just jog, and there's a lot of steps. So if you're doing your exercise to do like step climbing, you can do it right there in the park. Run up and down the steps. Besides, I'm going to mention in this little restaurant, they make a great club sandwich, and the beer is very cold and very cheap too, and great view. This is a restaurant in Costambar called The Garden, and it's been running a while. It's a nice restaurant right on the side of the street. This is in La Terrenas. That's Fior there, and we went on a little road trip. This is a couple of years ago, I think, and this new hotel gave us a really great deal for the night because they were still under construction, and had its own jacuzzi tub on the balcony. And that's the view in Las Terrenas. That's across the street there. You're seeing the beach. Here's a few of us here, a couple of guys I know. The guy on the right, Gwendol, has left. He's in Costa Rica now. Peter's still here. He's living in Sosua. And that's me in the middle. And this is literally a bar, disco, restaurant. And we're sitting out on tables having beer and smoking cigars beside the gas pumps on the side of the road. It's actually a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that place. And it's just up the road from here. Here we are. This is me playing pool in one of the pool hall bars. These are open walled. So actually there are no walls around here because it's never cold. But there's a roof overhead, of course. This is that same pool place. That's Peter in the background. Pedro, I call him. He's a Chinese fellow, but we call him Chino Negro because he's quite dark. This is Roy. Roy is the fellow who was killed by his wife a year and a bit ago, about a year and a half. And that's in the Happy Hippo before it was renovated. He was married to a very beautiful woman, about 23 years old. And there's a long story behind that. I wouldn't get too thinking that this is like a common thing here. It's not. But Roy got himself into an awful lot of big trouble there, often got him killed. Here's a few of us on our motorcycles out on a trip down through little outside of town here, not very far. Really beautiful ride up there. And that's Peter and Roy. Not the same Roy. This is a different Roy. And another fella here, friend of ours. I'm drawing a blank on his name now. Bruce. Yes, that's Bruce there. And that's another sad story I can tell you about later. And this is a little bar on the beach we went to. It's about an hour's ride from here. Very beautiful beach. We just stop and have a beer or two on the ride. That's that same beach right there. That's the view from the beach bar that we were sitting at. This is Bruce here. Bruce is the fellow I mentioned who went through all the long marital problems and extended divorce, and he killed himself just before the quarantine for coronavirus. That just went down in January. There's Chino Negro, Peter, in front of one of the mountain path pubs that we often stop at. And that's one of our motorcycles out front. That's Peter's motorcycle. It's the same bike I have. There's Bruce and Peter, or Chino Negro as we call him, and Roy on the right. Here we are just, I think we're just arriving or leaving at that one beach bar. That would be my motorcycle in the middle here, the one without anybody on it. There I am riding down that beach, doing a little beach run on the motorcycle. And this is another bar in the mountains. I don't know, I can't remember where that is. I've been trying to figure that out. That's my motorcycle out front. And that's a little typical kind of dirt path, dirt road up into the mountains and the camps, the sort of countryside that we'd be riding down. Yes, Michael points out there's no license plate. My new motorcycle here, I still don't have a license plate on them. It takes them 3 months to get your license plate out to you, but you carry your papers around in the meantime. And then now it's been, because of the quarantine, I've had this motorcycle for 6 months and I still don't have a license plate on it. Here's Chino Negro at one of the pool halls we often attend, or we used to attend. Here he is reaching out, getting water off the roof of one of the bars. This is at El Carre's bar. And this is the moon coming up, actually. That's the moon coming up on the beach here in Costambar. Fior, my girlfriend on the right, she's standing beside a friend of ours, just checking out the moon. That's on the beach of Costambar, right where I live. That's the moon shot right there. Now this is Roy. Roy is a friend of mine. He goes riding, and he's also a good windsurfer. He took up not windsurfer, but kite surfer, and he took up kite surfing after moving here or coming here regularly years ago, and he's become quite good at it. He's about 65 years old, and he's out there regularly 2-3 days a week kite surfing. And here he is. He's even doing jumps. And this is right in Puerto Plata, right off the beach in Puerto Plata here. That there fella, he's about 65 years old, a little bit shorter than me and a little bit lighter, and still kite surfing and riding a bike. And has a very pretty young girlfriend besides. So he's having a great life here. He's stuck in Canada. He went back and got stuck, couldn't come back from the quarantine. So I don't know how happy he is there. That's right off the beach in Puerto Plata here. And again, that's Roy kite surfing in. Here with beside a couple of Dominican ladies at one of the carnivals down here a year or two ago. Chino Negro, we call him. And there's the fellow in the back is Bertico, and he teaches kite surfing here. I've taken a couple lessons off him myself. And this was, I think, one of his friends or an old girlfriend of his. That was at the carnival too. There's Peter having a blast as usual. This is that carnival right there. There's a big stage and music and all these stands for barbecue and beer and drinks. It's quite a party. Goes on all afternoon and all night. This is on the Malecon. The Malecon is the boulevard that runs beside the water on the beach on one side, and then where we just saw those pictures is on the road, only off to the left here by 50 feet or so. And this is one of the bars, but it's closed. This one's closed up, probably for renovations. That's my motorcycle down there at the party at night, parked on the side of the road. Motorcycles are integral to the Dominican culture here because of their cheap way to get around. Everybody uses motorcycles, and kids grow up on motorcycles. Basically, most Dominican kids probably got brought home from the hospital on a motorcycle. And I like it. I love the motorcycle culture. This is a father and his kid, looks like, just doing a regular everyday motorcycle ride trip to somewhere. This is a little path. I think this was where they were rebuilding the tourist highway over the mountain. It's a beautiful ride. All kinds of beautiful vistas coming around the road here. And there's a guy on that same road, a young fellow riding his horse. Here's a couple of old fellas. The fellow in the riding here, he's what we call the moto concho. And he gives you a ride, anybody a ride, for 50 pesos anywhere in town. That's the deal with moto conchos. They're taxis, basically. And the old fellow on the back is probably coming from work, going home. I find it great. These kids are all piled into the back of a pickup truck. And then somebody's adults driving the front of the pickup truck. I don't know where they're going or where they're coming from, but they were having a blast. And I was just standing at the side of the road on my motorcycle, and they were just waiting for the light to turn, so I took their picture. And you see all these interesting vehicles down here too. Here's a little tricycle. These kinds of things are used extensively for moving things around, as are motorcycles. You will see almost everything in a motorcycle. This photo here shows the, I'm just going to look at this question here. Yes, older enduros, fix it, says here. I would say this, folks, this country, you couldn't design it, plan it better for motorcycles than it is right now. There's paths everywhere. The weather is good almost every single day of the year to ride a motorcycle. So it's a motorcycle rider's dream to ride around here. These are what you call repuestos, and these are little stops at the side of the road where mechanics are there all day long, and they just fix motorcycles. You don't. Here's another question from Michael. Driving license. You don't need a license to ride a motorcycle here. You don't need any kind of license. Anyone is allowed to ride a motorcycle in the Dominican Republic. There's no restrictions, as far as I know. There might be a restriction of 12 years old or something like that. I don't know. And what about driving licenses? You do need a license to drive a car, but not a motorcycle. So here, these guys they're fixing motorcycles at the side of the road, and there are so many of these little stops. They're all over the place. So if you got to get an oil change or you have a flat tire, there's a different stores for flat tires. They call them oh, now I forgot the word for it. Gomeria. And these are just a little stop. All they do is fix flat tires. And they're all over the place too, because there's so many motorcycles. There's always somebody with flat tires and motorcycles under repair. Here you'll see, here's another guy, a moto concho. These guys with their orange vests on, those are all moto conchos. They're motorcycle taxis. And this old fella here, I've seen him several times with his wheelchair going down the street with his umbrella to keep off the shade. Here you see a whole family on a motorcycle. As you can see, there's the mother and the father. There's 2 kids in front of the mother, and there's 2 kids in front of the father. They've got 4 kids and 2 adults on that motorcycle. And this is very, very common. And that is probably a 150cc Chinese motorcycle right there with 6 people on it. But they love it. The kids I think this way of getting around brings people closer together. I mean, you're literally in one another's laps every single day at some point, sitting in one another's laps. So, and you can see from the smiles on the kids' faces a lot of times. This is a propane tank. Now notice here, this is on the back of a motorcycle. There is no rope. There's no bungee cord. There's nothing holding it there. The guy's just got his hand on it. And you'll see the small regular barbecue style propane tanks just being balanced. And the guy balances with his back as he drives and not even having a hand on the cylinder, riding down the road delivering propane tanks. He's probably, somebody at a house probably called him up and said, take this tank over and get it filled for me. So he probably took it empty and is returning it filled up with propane. Here's a couple of guys going on their bikes. They just noticed me taking pictures at the side of the road. Here's another couple, a rather large woman on the back there. And this is a regular thing I see, that people laughing and smiling while riding their motorcycles. I don't know, what can I say? Here's another guy bringing some kid, maybe his kid, probably to school or something. That looks like one of those little Honda Cubs he's riding there. Could be. This guy saw me taking pictures and I barely got the camera around on time to catch him as he was showing off for the camera. Let me go back here. This is a good question here. I don't want to give you the impression that everybody's always happy here. It is just not true. There are all the problems that relationship problems and anger and all those things that you see everywhere in the world. You're going to see it here too. But people are a lot of the time very, very happy. They know they place a priority on enjoying their lives. They really do. What are people like? Are they genuine, honest? Some are, yes. There are con artists here too. There are people who just want to befriend you to try and get some money from you. But that is not all of it. You'll see more of that in the tourist areas than you see in the regular areas. The regular people are regular people trying to enjoy their lives. I do know that in Asia, he says here, there's a tendency to lie, especially to save face. Yeah, you're going to see some lying here, of course. You know, you're going to see all the same things you see in other parts of the world. Let's go on here. Let me see if I get this one going again. And this is something you'll see here fairly regularly. This is a cow just crossing the road. You have to keep a watch on them. It's not hard to, I don't find the cows very dangerous because they don't really move very fast. You'll see them long ahead of time. You're going to have to give them a wide berth and get by them. Here's a couple of more cows. This is just on the street leaving Costambar here. This is Fior, my girlfriend, with one of her good friends in her house. I took this portrait when we were over visiting her. This is me and Fior. That's just taken on the beach, I think. Just coming off the motorcycle. This is Bertico, the fellow who teaches kite surfing down on the beach in Puerto Plata here. He is a really good kite surfer. Very skilled. There he is there doing one of his jumps. And again, he does all kinds of tricks, and he's been in competitions for kite surfing as well. He's been kite surfing since probably he was 6 years old. And Bertico is the fellow who taught Roy, the 65-year-old guy, to kite surf. And Roy, in turn, gave his equipment, his older equipment, to Bertico, and Bertico uses that, and Roy helped him get going on teaching kiting. There's Bertico doing basically a upside down fly just off that rock in downtown Puerto Plata. And he's doing another jump. I've seen Bertico jump on the kite probably 50 feet in the air. Here he's doing tricks where he lifts his feet out of the kite board. There he is upside down, acting for the camera, of course. And in this shot, he did a high jump and then took his board right off and then put his feet back in the board before landing. Okay, this is some of the things you'll see on motorcycles in the Dominican Republic. This guy is carrying a washing machine on the back of his motorcycle. One hand to hold the washing machine and the other hand to handle the bike. There's a couple other guys traveling on their bikes. I've probably said this a million times, but I love the motorcycle culture here. And there's a young kid with a moto concho and probably her dad on the back or a relative of some kind. This is just some young fella I saw at the side of the road. He was such a happy, good-looking young fella. I just took his shot, took a picture of him in Puerto Plata. This is a beat-up old little pickup truck. Looks like a Nissan with another car in the back. I don't know how they got it in there because they don't have cranes. They probably had like 15 guys all grabbing around it and hustled that car into the back of that pickup truck. Here's a guy going with bags and bags of what looks like popcorn. And you'll see this all the time. You'll see guys selling bread, and there'll be bread bags on boards and sticks sticking out 5 feet to each side of the motorcycle as they deliver bread around. Now, some of the streets where very poor people live look a little bit like this. It's a bit muddy. This is a very poor street in Puerto Plata. This is one of Fiore's nieces. She's very shy when I first met her, and she was actually an adorable little girl. I had to take her picture. And that's Fiore, one of her sisters and brother-in-law. And that's Fiore with her nephew. Really good-looking little kids. And this is a shot right on the of the street, right outside the port in Puerto Plata. And this is fairly typical looking of streets, of regular streets. Colorful houses that light up very rich colors when the sun's going down and the sun's coming up. The sunrise and sunsets really brings the colors out. I find it very, very interesting. And this is at night down that same street, right outside the port of Puerto Plata. And there's a couple of fellows I know, bike riding buddies up, and we're just heading up over the mountains towards Santiago. That would be Roy, the kite surfer, on the far right with the helmet on. That's Mad Dog Willie in the middle. Mad Dog is he's mad. He's had 2 accidents in the last year. He's just not very cautious on the motorcycle. And that's Chino Negro, Peter, on the far left, looking over the valley. We stopped at the side of the road on our ride. This is one of those tricycle delivery motorcycles. I like these interesting looking vehicles. They have a lot of character to them. So I just figured I would take that shot. Here's a guy delivering bread here. And this is a typical load of bread being delivered. There are a lot of characters here in this country. I would say that it attracts some of the most interesting, colorful characters that you will find in the world. They find their way to places like Puerto Plata. But that's the bread delivery guy right there, probably delivering an entire fresh load of freshly baked bread. This you'll see all the time. This guy looks like he's going to his own wedding or something on a scooter. I find these kinds of things charming. This is a freighter right out front of Costambar here. I took this shot on a morning walk, probably about 6:30 in the morning or so. Oh, that's me. And that's Fiora on the left with one of her nieces, playing it up for the camera, of course. And this is down the street from me here as well, in Costambar. And this was I saw this rainbow in the early morning, I think it was, early morning. I think it'd be about 6:30 in the morning. And I found it interesting that rainbow on the right side coming down into that tree, right at that tree right there is Barba Negros, which is Blackbeards. And Blackbeards is a whorehouse. It's an actual kind of old style brothel. There's rooms there, and actually they have a good restaurant too, and pretty good food. And they have one of the best pool tables around. So we've often gone into Blackbeard's to play pool, and there's often 25 or 30 beautiful women in there hanging around the bar. And they have a Saturday afternoon bikini contest, which is quite interesting. So I thought it was interesting that the rainbow, one end of the rainbow landed right into Blackbeard's. But the only people who make money at Blackbeard's are the girls. And there's me and Peter. And Peter was the one who convinced me to buy this bike here. That's my first bike from 3 years ago. And I think that shot was taken probably within the first few days that I got the bike. And that's me on the bike up in the mountains. This trip, we were going to the monument of the Mariposa. So that's a story in itself. The Mariposas are three sisters who were part of the revolutionary movement, the 4th of July movement, to get rid of the dictator Trujillo here. Trujillo killed all three of them. Pushed their Jeep off of a cliff, and that outraged the people of the Dominican Republic so much that Trujillo was assassinated within a year. There's me sitting in on a little rock waiting for my motorcycle to get fixed in Habillard. Habillard is a little barrio just outside of Costambar here. And that's up by the monument as well. And there's me with three of the old dudes that are down here. I'll introduce you to them. That's Skipper. This is the Happy Hippo bar. It's been renovated now. This is just before the renovations. And this guy who owns the bar now, Brian, he always comes back with a stack of cigars, and we all got into cigar night that night. So we've all got these big stogies there. And Skipper is the guy on the left. Skipper owns the bar behind you. You can't see his bar there, but that blue is the start of Skipper's bar. And Skipper has a young girlfriend here that he lives with when he's here. She's about 28. She runs that bar when he's gone. And this fella here is Daniel. Daniel's been here, came down when his father first came here. And they have a farm up in the mountains near that pass where we went over to Santiago. That's me in the back, and this is Larry. Larry is a Canadian. He's been here since 30 or 35 years, and there's quite a story behind Larry. And Larry's got a whole pile of stories to tell. So I have lots more pictures of these guys, but this is, I think, all we have for today. Oh, there's us again there. And there I am about to jump into this pool. We were on Roy and I were on a motorcycle trip on our way back, and we veered off the road and found this cave that has a freshwater pool in it. It's just beautiful and cool. And we went swimming in there, and there's actually fish inside that pool. And it's actually a monument. So we had to pay 100 pesos to get inside. There I am having a stogie at the Happy Hippo bar. I probably that's enough pictures. I think that's all I've got for today, folks. So if there's any last minute questions about Dominican Republic, we've been going on an hour and a half here, covered a lot of ground. Put them in the comments right away, and I'll get to them. Otherwise, I'm going to be signing off now. And I really want to thank you for joining me here, having a look at what life is like in the Dominican Republic. I do highly recommend that you come down and have a look around before you commit to any of these things. No matter where you're going to go, if you're thinking of leaving, being an expat, I suggest you go for a couple of weeks. You know, look around and see if the place suits you, because this won't suit everybody. I like it here, but I can see myself traveling to other locations as well, because there's a lot of places in the world that aren't infested with feminism. That's the main criteria for me in my search for other places to live, is that it can't be feminist. Feminism ruins everything it touches without exception. Feminism is the dark side of female nature coming in to destroy the world. So having said that, folks, do something you love every single day. Even though we're surrounded by feminists, by people who hate us and want to destroy us, you still got to live your life, do what you love to do, and so at the end of your life, you can feel contented and satisfied. I hope you join me again tomorrow with another session of Studio Brulee. Coffee with Steve, I should say. Ciao, folks.